It's been over 3 whole months since From Software and Bandai Namco released Nightreign's DLC, The Forsaken Hollows, and if you're still watching to this point, then that means you're either entertained or are still looking for some good advice, since I gotta say, this expansion smashes your groin like nobody's business. So today we're gonna be taking a look at everything while I share some advice that's good to both new and old players. And that begins with the areas. What? No, not yet, not these areas, because enough has been added to the base map for me to yap about it. You see these two new structures? One's called a marsh and the other a blacksmith village. Here are there many different types. One has a sacred seal, staff, and stone sword key location, while the other has shitty bow racks. But another big difference aside from the bosses is that one holds useful ancient forges while the other has bleed water.
I'm in bleed water? Bleed water!
It doesn't even stop there. You remember the joke I made back when I ranked every side of Grace? Either that or they suddenly realized that they needed to get serious, or else Miyazaki was gonna slowly realize that some checkpoints just outright don't make sense, or maybe it's him making all the graces and he's just occasionally placing down intentionally illogical ones because he's bored and wasn't allowed to make the madness and sleep swamp we'd all hoped for. Well, it's real, everybody. Michael Zaki's vision has finally been realized and we're all currently at his mercy. Anyhow, about those forges. They can appear in multiple different locations, but the only tricky one is this forge that might spawn if RNGesus hates you as much as the developers, but luckily there's always gonna be 3 forges to light in every single one of these, and you only need to light one to access the giant smithing monument, which greedily allows just 1 Ash of War change to whatever weapon you wish to spend it on. Though to be fair, while unlikely, you can get a mega OP combo sometimes, so I guess it makes sense. Also, I lied. There's actually 2 lame spots a forge could be in if we're talking about the more open variant of Blacksmith villages, which have multiple bosses spread within them, instead of them shits just sitting in a hill jerking each other off until you kill them without much inconvenience. Anyways, back to the marshes and their 3 big points of interest. All you gotta know is that they're always either underground or near the underground's entrance somewhere, which is where you should always go, as there's literally nothing else you could do here unless you wanna fight some ridiculous enemies that give you 2 cents in return. But finding these two, despite what I said, could be a bit difficult sometimes, so here are some tricky spots they could be in. When you're right about to enter a marsh, make sure to make a quick turn in case there aren't any seals or staves in this room so as to not lose your mind when you can't find them later. Also, here's another stave location for when you're in a sleep marsh. The only marsh that has one of the good shits after you kill the boss. What's that? You don't give a fuck and only want the bosses? Well, here's a marsh shortcut then. And 2 for the enclosed blacksmith villages, because I forgot to mention them earlier. Though you can never have too little time to yoink wherever chests you spot, or too little time to say fuck you to Libra for not having this thing, and to kill a certain Albinoric and bloody blacksmith villages or marshes to get the flask instead. A certain Albinoric who only spawns in if the balancers are the target and if the demon prince is on vacation, because obviously if the day 1 boss isn't the demon duo, then it's gonna be Mog on day 2. Unless that's not an option either, because believe it or not, there's a chance of said Albinoric to not spawn in despite Libra not having it either. And believe it or not again, despite you being able to pry one from Libra's cold dead hands if he sells it, even if you already bought it from him, that's not the case if he doesn't offer it. This fuck-ass goat bitch has the gall to show up on the map every time Mug is the final boss, only to not sell you the purifying crystal flask like half the time. Which is why the real ultimate counter is to instead say fuck you to that shit, and dodging it with these 2 ultimates like a man. Or just not giving a shit and negating some of its damage like an even bigger man. Oh right, the new invaders. I honestly have nothing to really add when it comes to them, so let's wrap them up quick. For Caligo, just occasionally hide somewhere till you reach the spot and slap her ass away. And your reward? A few seconds of invincibility. But only when you get hit with something that would have killed you. And only once per death. Not, ooh, I'm down but I'll be revived again kind of death. No, real death. Which is a little disappointing, but no one's gonna say no to a lot of money and a free 6 cents now, are they? If you're not playing solo, good, you can divide the work. But if you are, sucks to suck, buddy. There go all your plans. For Gladius, either cry in a corner somewhere as you restart the whole run, or just ignore his ass, because dealing with a nuisance that sucks 1 millimeter of HP per tick ain't so bad compared to actually fighting him and his dumbass hot dogs. But if you decide to fight him regardless because of your full HP buff suddenly becoming useless for the rest of the day and him being decently squishy even in deep of night and Kamar on top, your reward is more stamina recovery for you and your friends after attacking a lot. Does the number of times you have to attack for it to be triggered differ from weapon to weapon? Probably. Am I gonna test that shit out and also discover exactly how much stamina you get from this? Fuck no! If you're not playing solo, good, you can divide the work. But if you are, sucks to suck, buddy. There go all your plans. And lastly for the Harmonia. Just run straight to them while ignoring all the enemies who are conveniently distracted with killing their lifelong friends for being pink. Ha! Just kidding, bitch. This whole charade is anything but convenient, as these guys are notorious pussies who hide behind the main dungeon boss. If you're not playing solo, good. You can divide the work. But if you are, sucks to suck, buddy. There go all your plans. Did I also mention that they eventually disappear after some time too, just like every other special night invader? So if you really want to take him out, then hurry whilst ignoring the insanity that is Adele not being part of the team, as we literally see him invading Limveld in the trailer for the game. Anyways, aside from the nice amount of runes you get from them, they drop a blessing that's quite worthwhile. What does the blessing do, you might ask? Whenever you die and are revived, regardless of the means, you now get a 10% attack power boost that lasts exactly 45 seconds. Plus, whenever you perish, there is a 30% chance of you coming back to life with exactly half health. And before you ask, no, it does not have any weird interactions with other mechanics. Believe me, I tested everything. Now it's finally time to actually talk about the new map disguised as a shifting earth to have a lazy excuse for why it can't have any shifting earth events within it. You've got a lack of Everjails, a lack of safety, a lack of direction, new old faces, structures, and more. When you're in the Great Hollow... Bro, out of all the names they could have chosen, they chose the Great Hollow. I don't want to be reminded of the trauma. It's best to stay near the center for the most part, as all 3 possible end of day boss locations are inside it, meaning you'll have an easier time there with the zone telling you to hurry the fuck up. Especially since there's a whole bunch of bosses, merchants, and potential events in here anyway, so why not? If you feel like wasting 98k on day 2, there's a chance of a golden merchant spawning in after the day 1 boss is killed and selling 4 legendary weapons in this precise location. Said 4 weapons could be any out of the 26 legendaries there are, by the way. Though like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's best to just hope you get good armaments to use from bosses, chests, and some enemies, so you save yourself valuable runes for something else. Cause unless you have nothing, or that bitch sells you these, which is mega unlikely, pretend that he never existed like in day 1. If you're starting a balancer run, unsure of whether or not Mog will show up thanks to Libra feeling like a bitch again, you can see if there's a purifying crystal flask albinoric here, and if not, well, you better start praying that either you won't get mugged or won't run out of flasks to burn. If you're curious as to why there seems to be secret churches the game's not telling you about, then that's because the map, for some reason, has layers you view separately. And would you look at that, the churches were visible all along, but I'm still mad about it, so excuse me while I teleport to Miyazaki's headquarters and have a quick conversation. If you love your weapon so much you just can't help but want an exact copy, then all you gotta do is go underground here where the great church... Somebody help me, it burns so good! Hey look, there it is. Okay, maybe I'm over-exaggerating a bit. Especially if you're fast enough to outright kill the snake instantly if it's the one you're dealing with, but whatever. If you're looking for crystals to break on day 1, just remember you need only 3 broken in solo mode instead of the usual 4. Also, these are their spawning locations, which I confirmed myself like the tryhard I am. If you're too lazy to run all the way to the Great Crystal, there's always gonna be a hawk or 2 available to help. Now once you have the blessing and can fly up, either go to the tower or go to the tower. Unless the first wave of day 2 hasn't passed yet, which means you've no idea where the circle's gonna close in and thus whether or not you should stay or go to the other tower via teleportation, then there's no excuse for preferring the castles. Well, actually there's the exception of doing the Undertaker's Remembrance quest, and there's still being some pretty decent stuff, so fine, I'll acknowledge them a little. If you insist on going to them and are on this side, then ignore literally everything and just pay a visit to this place made by Adolf Hitler himself, because good luck trying to even find it without a guide or something without wasting the entire second day like I did. Did I also mention that this is where you have to go when doing the Undertaker quest? Fuck this room and everything it stands for it has hurt me more than anything else on this planet. But hey, you do get some nice talisman at least, so fair is fair. Oh yeah, you can also beat up the Super Saiyan Hippopotamus or Godskin Duo if you go all the way here as well. And if you are on this side, then just rush straight after the bosses, and then any great enemy you spot in the sewers if you still have some time, since they're actually worth it. Oh, and regardless of what side you're on, grab the treasure chests, cause most likely they'll have something busted. There's also one event that could play out in this side of the map where you'd have a mutated great enemy spawn in at this structure's very top. Now of course, mutated enemies could only spawn in during Deep of Night expeditions, but these guys are an exception as they show up in whatever expedition. They're especially worth killing for the amount of runes you get from them, plus their strawberry flavored equipment they drop. Alright, for this next part, I was gonna explain how the towers work, but I think it's best that I let my good friend and Nightreign beast Katie do the talking instead.
So basically, the tower is stinky and it reeks of bleed. Like in this example here, you do more bleed damage, but you take more bleed build up from the boss. However, it could reek of other stats effects too, like frost or poison. And just remember that whatever you do roll, the rest of the tower is going to be like that as well. Just all stinky.
Thanks, Katie. Though unfortunately, it's only now that I realize there's basically no advice I can give here since the towers are pretty self-explanatory. Though something I'd like to add is to avoid being a dumbass like me and notice how there's a giant spirit spring jump pad available at all times, made to save your ass like 50 years of running in case you died to the bosses above. And to carry around a Twiggy tier flask if possible, because I swear people do not understand the value of having a buff that lasts a decent while, which literally nullifies rune and level loss upon death. You realize just how many clutch plays and make or break moments that could lead to? And to avoid doing the tower altogether if you get the constant regeneration buff or if you get Freya, because trying to reach the top then is the single most grueling and masochistic thing you can do to yourself, and I say you're better than that. In fact, avoid doing the tower in higher Deep of Night levels too if the bosses happen to be especially cancerous. And in fact, how about I rant about the towers actually? I know I put an emphasis on how cool they were prior, and while you do get a nice buff alongside legendary equipment and a bajillion runes, the main mechanic of it all makes no damn sense. Why give me, and the end of day 1 or 2 guy I'm fighting, a buff that benefits him way more than it does for me? And why is it possible to fight bosses with these, like in this example? Neither of us benefit from this. The whole system is flawed due to its excessive randomness, which makes me hate it. It's unbelievable. Can you believe this, Wretch? Moving on to the 2 new Nightfarers you unlock after having your ass kicked by the final boss jump scaring you. Here, I'm gonna be providing some useful info regarding how to improve on their many different playstyles. For the Undertaker, you can try turning her into an
Incantation abomination.
by having relics that primarily focus on faith, mind, and enhanced incantations. Oh, and having this relic passive which boosts your attack power by 15% for 40 seconds the moment you press the ultimate button. Something you should be having regardless of what Undertaker you're playing. And if you stack this with your 10% attack skill on top, then suddenly those grafted scions will look more like grafted pillows. Oh, and technically, Trance could give you 20% attack for a brief moment if you hit something enough times with it, but most likely you won't get much use out of it. Especially in the case of spells which could miss and take a bit to cast unless you have the ultimate variant, which lasts for twice as long as the usual 8 seconds. More on that later. You could also get lucky and find these for additional damage, though you and I both know that it's most likely not happening given how racist this game can be with its RNG sometimes, so just abuse the Poise Revenants and Recluse's Salivate over as you melt entire health bars with decent offensive seals. And if you get this bitch, then there's literally no fucking reason in the whole universe not to spam it from now on as your main option. Even if you've gotten this and used it 1,000 times before due to how likely you are to get it, you can't even have that as an excuse because it's never fucking exhilarating to watch as entire health bars are scorched and tossed around just like their bosses, bro. Psst, whenever you see a
Big shot.
don't forget that that bitch sells infinite starlight shouts, meaning infinite fuel for infinite big number dopamine hits. This isn't just great news for the Undertaker, but for every spellcaster. Especially since, spoilers, there's another hidden spellcaster you're about to discover, but you didn't hear that from me, okay? There goes Breadley's little surprise. Huh?
Oh, I was never here.
The hell? Well, anyways, either that or say fuck you to her fate stats and start beating shit to death with physical damage, good ashes of war, and maybe one of these. And these if you're lucky. Otherwise, just grease your shit. You don't even have to be limited to just using strength and faith weapons, as with a little dexterity, bam, suddenly everything is free real estate. You could technically get more dexterity than this, but you'll most likely have to sacrifice one of these in that case, so I prefer to just close out the gap with something like a Night Invader Relic passive. Because this shoddily explained Relic passive is worth keeping on any pure physical damage Undertaker, since with it, anytime you use literally any incantation that affects your body in any way, you immediately gain a 15% physical attack buff for a whole ass minute. Same thing goes for if a teammate were to buff you with an incantation, by the way. It's real nice, unlike these ones. By the way, speaking of loathsome Hex, I always thought it was mega annoying how inconsistent it was with its piercing ability. How come sometimes I want to hit multiple dudes that are perfectly lined up only for it to stop? Well, as it turns out, the solution all this time was just to lock onto the enemy behind the line, which suddenly guarantees you piercing everybody. Something that took me ages to discover. Anyways, as I was saying, if you see a relic with these, make sure to... The same can be said for this pile of disappointment called a Scholar passive. Oh right, the Scholar. As for him, we're gonna quickly go over his analyze skill before anything, since there's actually a few things to unpack here. First of all, unless you're a god with your timing and know exactly when someone is about to land a huge critical hit on an enemy, you should never try reaching the tier 3 debuff, since instead of lowering a dude's attack by even more compared to the other 2 tiers, it just lowers it by as much as the second tier one, but also makes the enemy take 60% more damage on the next hit, and that's about it. Plus the other tiers are just easier to get overall. However, if we're talking about choosing the tier 3 buff instead, then absolutely get that shit. Being able to get a shit ton of stamina instantly with a temporary protective bubble tier that parries shit is where it's at, bro. This shit is so powerful, you can use it and his ultimate to completely negate Mog's Blood Moon attack when executed correctly. Something I intentionally avoided mentioning earlier to, I don't know, make the video flow better, I guess. Though make sure not to get too excited when using it, or else you'll just be throwing, and I say that from experience. Or just don't bother with the third tier at all, since the other two are also quite good. Anyhow, about his playstyles. You can either abuse his ridiculous 50 arcane, which makes the Executor's 28 look like nothing to spread every disease known to man with relics that give you a lot of status effects to work with, or become a madman and start with enough inventory slots to fuel your never-ending bagcraft greed as you eat any and all crumbs within a 10 light-year radius for max consumable upgrades. Though it's only these items that are worth leveling up, as the rest aren't. And here's how you level them up. And here's how many times you gotta level them up before they fully level up. And if you still wanna see what every other consumable item's special effects are, boom. Here, I'll even give you some time to pause. And now would be a good time for me to talk a little bit about the pickled turtleneck item, which is a bit different because it's only worth using if you have the items confer to all nearby allies relic passive. Otherwise, it's just an inferior analyzed stamina buff that takes up a valuable item slot. Though this honestly goes without saying, since this shit is downright necessary in most scholar builds, meaning you most likely already have it. I mean, just look at the items that it buffs and tell me it's not mandatory. Also, side note, if you wanna go full Wraith Goblin mode, then either get ready to spam this shit 60 times or find one of these. Or these if you're really lucky in Mage Towers or fucking wherever else you find Open Parents, since this category is much easier to upgrade this way. By the way, this is the only category where there's a difference in how much you gotta use an item before it's upgraded depending on what it is. And before I completely forget, here's how many times you gotta level up these thingies for them to level the up. And in case you don't know or completely forgot, you have to actually hit an enemy to level up damaging items, meaning you can't spam that shit the moment you find it off the ground. And just like with the Undertaker, don't forget about these Scholar exclusive relic passives, especially these two. They make me sob tears of joy just from looking at them. Unlike this one, which I forgot to make fun of earlier. Fuck am I gonna do with this, huh?
Shut up! Don't you know that this enables a whole new playstyle? You can keep casting spells until the sun fucking explodes. Even Recluse can't keep up.
Alright, fine. Maybe it's a little useful. You know, I should have seen this coming given that you can make a ridiculous pure faith Undertaker. So the whole idea with a Sorceress Scholar build is you hop on multiplayer, you get this thing, you got a lot of FP, you got a lot of staves, you got a lot of magic damage / intelligence, you abuse his analyzed stamina buff to cast forever, you abuse your arcane, not for the arcane spells obviously, but just for applying a million diseases for extra damage, you got a lot of mage towers and abuse his ability to carry a lot of extra shit for extra starlight shards that are extra beneficial due to extra FP gained when using them at max level. Also, now would be a good time to tell you that with great power comes the great and tragic realization that you can stack multiple of the same status effect attack power passives, meaning you can only have a maximum of 3 of these on you because there's only 3 different types per status effect thing. Anyways, is this stuff guaranteed? No. Do you most likely have them somewhere in your pile of relics, most of which you don't use just like me? Yes. So you know what? I say it's worth trying out. Beat spamming the fuck out of the Wraith Calling Bell, which is viable but mega boring, and I say you're better than to walk the path of boring ideas. Trust me, it ain't worth it. Though, just a heads up, and I learned this from playing with randoms, you should probably only do runs with this build alongside friends you can actually communicate with, because chances are the game screws you over by not having this guy or enough sorcery rises, in which case you'll have to beg like a starving revenant. Oh wait, you'd already be doing that to get more warming stones, cause obviously. Oh yeah, there's also a couple special build options for these two that I've yet to mention. Let's say you're playing Undertaker and have an ultimate art fetish and it's the only thing that turns you on. In that case, embrace being a menace to society and use something that has these. This is great for the Undertaker, as she already gets more than enough loadsome hexes, so why not have even more to use her second art? Ultra Instinct. By holding the character skill button with both abilities ready, you suddenly become the wilder on crack. before 15 seconds. Automatically dodging every attack with a backstab, meaning you can arguably deal more damage in that duration than your spine. Or better yet, take advantage by reviving your teammates without a worry, even if they're 3 bars down. This is such a well-known mechanic, and yet the fact that I have to really emphasize how useful it is should speak volumes about how people underuse it. Also, did you know that even if you didn't have your art, the character skill could still be triggered by holding its button? That's right, this mind-bogglingly blowing fact is one that I figured out all by myself as I didn't hear anyone else talk about it. So what does it do? Fucking nothing! But in all honesty, this whole thing isn't really a viable pick, given that, like I said, you get more than enough ultimate arts to use, so it's best to focus on something that you actually need more of. Oh, and because I can still smell your disappointment from how I teased you with a chargeable character skill that's completely useless, here's some actually useful elite ball knowledge. If you're playing Recluse and have nothing but bare fists equipped and hold the character skill button while waiting for your hand to reach your head so you can press the Ash of War button, you do this. Shout out to Katie again for showing this tech to me. And shout out to Sushi Souls who showed it to Katie so she could show it to me. And shout out to the game for withholding the secret from us for absolutely no reason. It's a completely FP free way of dealing solid magic damage and stance damage whilst giving you magic affinity residues to collect if you're out of your mind and plenty of poise to work with so you're not getting stunned every time you use it like it's Dark Souls 3. Anyhow, back to the 2 Nightfarers. So how about we say you want something overkill for the both of them? Well, luckily I saved the best for last, and by far the strongest setups for these 2 Nightfarers are... I mean, honestly, what did you expect? Of course, the strongest scholar is the one who can hurl 32 fully upgraded fire pots directly at whatever's unfortunate enough to be in his field of view. Seriously, this shit's easier done than said. You don't even need all of the relics to start you out with small pouches or improved throwing pot damage or fire attack, which is what makes this strategy so busted in the first place. You can basically put whatever in here without any issues and still have like 20 bombs to shit on people with. Of course, the strongest Undertaker is the one capable of boxing anyone to death with a damage output that looks like this. If you were to ever stumble upon iron balls or star fists of any variety whilst playing as her, then you've basically already won, and the rest of the run is now an interactive cutscene where you're the main character. Now, while these 2 are the main focus of the video, we also have to show some love to the other Nightfarers, since they've also had some pretty nice buffs letting you play them in entirely new ways. Due to the addition of these beauties, you can now play as a Duchess, Wilder, Executor, or even Undertaker if the build ideas I shared for her aren't enough, capable of stacking multiple skill attack power passives and splitting the earth in half to crush the balls of any Nightlord. Also, due to the recent changes made to the improved damage negation at low HP buff you get from formerly useless relics, they're certainly pretty good when used by a guardian looking for even more defense. Also, due to Revenants now having the power to start out with Beast Claw, you can keep gathering improved bestial incantation upgrades, allowing you to do this shit. Filthy. Disgusting even. Also, we're not done with the Executor, because that's right everybody, FromSofts just can't stop buffing their favorite Crucible fella, because the Executor's Curse Sword now has a crit modifier high enough for this sort of setup to flourish and turn you into Sekiro himself. Or John HIV, because I forgot to mention that with a diabolical setup like this, you can inflict all 4 lethal status effects with 1 weapon and thrive like the maggot you are. Bleed, Frost, Poison, Scarlet Rot, the full package. Also, okay, I'ma be real, I don't really have any unique post-patch builds to share regarding these guys, so I'ma just share some already well-established ones you may have never tried before, plus some other bullshit. For the Raider, I recommend you try out spamming improved initial standard attack passives and just R1ing the shit out of literally everything. Or just purely focus on survivability, cause you can get a hilariously fat health bar with a character that has A in vigor. And for the Iron Eye, we're all familiar with how much he loves poison, but what if we took it to the max with relics that looked like this? What, you expecting me to say something? It's a fucking Poison Iron Eye build, I can't be asked. As for the Recluse and Wilder, if the improved skill attack power thing ain't enough. Fucking, I don't know man, they're really good at what they do and not much else. What do you want from me? I guess either give them relics that improve their traditional playstyle, or maybe flip the script and give the Recluse a shit ton of health so as to not die every hit in Deep of Night and to make it... A fuck-ass sorcery wilder if you really feel like it. Hey, I mean, it could happen, though obviously you're gonna need a lot. A few points in intellect, staves, more FP, and to play Deep of Night to be exact, but hey, who knows, that could be worth it. He does do some nice bleed and fire damage with these if you have the right relic passives, not to mention that he easily has more survivability than your average spellcaster. Yeah, on second thought, maybe his sister is better for that sort of thing. By the way, can I just mention how I used to mock this stupid ass relic only to realize that it's actually pretty good for any spellcaster other than Recluse? Yet here I am only using it on Recluse and no one else due to my sorcery spamming greed and not finding a way to slot it in for other dudes without losing something integral? Yeah, I don't know either. So one final piece of advice I have before moving on to the new Nightlords is that variety is one of this game's best aspects. So remember that while it's always nice trying out new recommended builds for characters, you should also keep experimenting with shit until you find something potentially even more fun. What the fuck, they're cutting me off. They're cutting me off from where I could go. Even if it means you have to cheat relics in due to the guaranteed ones not being enough. That's right. Not only do a whole bunch of relic effects screw you over way more than they have any right to, but a lot of them are straight garbage too. So good luck spending another 1,000 hours just to get good relics for any new build ideas you have in mind, which still shoot you in the foot anyways in one way or another. I'm done with this game's shitty scene system after dealing with it for over 400 hours and I want to have fun. And so should you. So get those cheat tables ready if you really have to and are only playing with friends or mods. No shame in it, especially since most of us do things like Ulta 4ing out of losing Elo and solo Deep of Night anyways, due to that being its own type of bullshit. Anyhow, this is the part where they kill you. Except they won't after you efficiently kick their ass with the right knowledge. Okay, in all honesty, there's not really much advice I could think of, so this segment's gonna be a little short, but either way... Okay, oh my god. For the Harmonia... Make sure to never stick to any one of them when attacking for more than 3 seconds because your ass will get penetrated, grabbed and tossed around as will your health bar. But 2 can play at that game for the balancers are squishier than a pillow and will die after a couple hits, so get creative on how many different ways you could kick their balls off. Or just play Scholar and assault them to death with these because unlike me, you probably don't suffer from dumb fucking idiot disease which sometimes results in someone with 300 hours looking like they've played for 3 minutes. IGN game journalist style. Also when you reach phase 2, unless you're on multiplayer and have no other choice, do not waste your time and all your flasks on the normal Valkyries as the big one's gonna harass you no matter how far you run or how hard you cry, so always prioritize her first. By the way, unless you absolutely have to, never dodge into this attack because for some reason you'll still take a little damage even after successfully avoiding it, so just get away from the blaster radius instead and you'll be fine. If we're talking about the Everdark Sovereign version, wait, sorry, I mean
the Salvation Standard Bearers,
then run away for your damn life until only one chases you. Otherwise, you'll get completely boned in the first 5 seconds. Once you take out the single balancer that was surge sprinting to slice your neck open, run away again until another one decides to leave everyone else to chase you, and the cycle continues until John Ulcerated Blood Spirit himself comes to greet you. In which case, the only real piece of advice I can give you here is that simply put, never try to stop him from doing his Scarlet Blood Aeonia of Doom and Terror because not only is there a decent chance of that not working, but also failure means instant death, so just run away instead and you'll be fine because shockingly, you can do that despite it looking like an unavoidable nuke. Wait, I completely forgot to mention sleep. Sleep, whenever it's actually useful enough, is still slept on. Since the harmonica is weak to sleep, all it takes is a few bashes to the skull with a unison-tipped hammer for them to snooze and lose for the next minute, giving you all the time to take them out one by one during the first phase instead of feeling like you're deep in the trenches during a world war where one misstep results in a landmine eviscerating your soul, Minesweeper style. You can exploit sleep even further by knocking the main balancer out cold, which makes hunting the smaller ones an actually viable option, especially since that means less of these bullshit attacks overall, though for the Everdark it's not as useful, unless you wanna keep fishing for ripostes I guess, but just beware that another balancer will immediately start dashing towards you once you get a proc, meaning sometimes using sleep then is actively detrimental. By the way, don't bother relying on sleeping pots as you can easily miss that shit, and the most you're getting is a handful of procs per slot in your inventory anyways, and no matter what, you're gonna have something better to bring with you. Also, for a boss like this, paying attention to different sound cues that correspond to certain moves can help with your dodging dodging despite not even seeing where the attack's coming from. Especially when it comes to their grab, which they like to do off screen. Or after the main balancer does this move, which usually results in 2 Valkyries trying to grab you at nearly the exact same time. Also, if you're playing Executor, then ignore literally everything I said thus far about the Harmonia, because remember when I talked about this Nightfarer's insane crit potential? Well, if you combine that with the fact that every balancer technically shares the same health bar, meaning extra damage dealt to them counts even after their death, you can just... This is how I learned that these motherfuckers have a failsafe at half health. So yeah, you can just do this shit to every balancer, except for the regular second phase Harmonia, where you'll most likely be killed trying to do so. Alright, we finally reached the Dreglord, baby. Or Greg, as I prefer to call him, just like my insane friends on Discord. This motherfucker's so disgusting and so powerful, he tells everything else to get good. He shits everywhere so much it starts to rain shit until it becomes sentient. Sentient enough to one-shot you when you're not looking. Also, I lied. Stragus really isn't that tough after a few runs, and that's proven by how you can literally avoid all of his ultimate attacks by just dodging at the right time. No precise or fancy surge sprinting or strategizing required. A nuke? Why run when I can just say this? Another nuke? How about another single button press? Oh, 2 nukes this time. That's twice as many dodges I gotta do now. Even when you've barely fought him, his trickiest moves can be countered by you just using your ultimate art at the right time. Especially if you're Undertaker. Unless we're talking about these 2 moves, they could be a bit tricky to dodge, so just surge sprint away so that you only have to dodge the last one by rolling away, because it most likely will track you no matter what, even while surge sprinting. Oh, and if you're playing Guardian against him, you have the opportunity to do the single coolest thing ever when he pulls out this move. But let's say you want to speedrun his ass. In that case, my final piece of advice to offer is... just fucking use fire and holy, bro. That's it. There's literally nothing for me to add here. Those are his main weaknesses. I guess also avoid using poison and scarlet rot too, since he resists that shit, given that he's practically made from it, unless you're playing Scholar or something, and simply watch as his sludgy, rotten ass melts into slimy trash juice. Looking for someone? You didn't seriously think your little tricks were gonna keep me down forever, did you? Despite your best efforts to silence me, I uploaded the balancer file seconds before it was time to go on a fun trip for the upcoming days. And thank God I did, because what do my eyes see upon returning? An unresponsive PC due to a messed up motherboard. How unfortunate, I thought, but after a long while, it started working once more. Not that it mattered much, given that I was able to get my hands on a new PC shortly after. One far better to retire its ancestor that was marching closer towards the afterlife day by day. But I digress. After working on a little animation as an appetizer for what's to come, I said, why not treat myself to some Deep of Night? Except I must have gotten quite rusty, as I kept losing over and over again, with there being a certain final boss that I kept running into abnormally often, which resulted in me getting slaughtered despite my best efforts. A certain final boss I ended the losing streak to by beating, but clearly that wasn't enough to keep them at bay, as I kept running into further hurdles in ways I have never witnessed before. Like with my attempts at gathering some nice footage and simply using my editing software. The weapon bequeathed Harmonia, Salvation's standard bearers. Truly, you're something to behold. A bunch of small, innocent, misguided girls bearing a striking resemblance to Saint Trina in America, forced into being unconscious weapons of destruction that serve an unknown deity to fulfill its twisted idea of balance? A truly tragic tale, but no matter how tender, how exquisite, a lie will remain a lie. None of you can hide the truth from me. You're all fully sentient and aware of your actions. Perfect soldiers who exist to torture Nightfarers within the thin veil and beyond its fourth border equally. That's where your true vision for balance lies. But guess what? The more you suppress information, the sooner it'll be fully revealed to the whole world. Having any of these debuffs will trigger this relic effect, which occasionally nullifies any damage taken, with the odds of it activating being 20%. Trust me, I tested it. this time. You never stood a chance. After all, the will of Breadley never breaks.